In recent years, Western countries, particularly the United States, have tried various methods to diminish China's role in the global supply chain, aiming for economic decoupling. However, the reality has often contradicted these efforts, with China's irreplaceability in manufacturing, the defense industry, and high-tech fields becoming increasingly apparent. Since the 2018 trade war, the U.S. has emphasized reshoring manufacturing, promoting policies under the banner of Made in America to revive its industrial confidence. Yet, 6 years later, the dream of decoupling has been shattered by harsh facts. The core segments of America's high-end manufacturing, technology, and even defense industries continue to rely heavily on China. In fact, this dependence has only deepened. As mentioned earlier, almost none of the key categories in America's defense sector are produced domestically, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. A recent authoritative report highlighted the grim state of the U.S. defense industry. The most dependent component in its procurement chain is Chinese suppliers. Forbes recently disclosed sensitive data revealing that the U.S. military's reliance on Chinese electronic products has reached 600%. For instance, the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier contains over 6,500 chips sourced from China. Furthermore, the dependency index for Chinese suppliers in the U.S. defense manufacturing sector stands at 200%, primarily in the electronics supply chain. Notably, over 40% of the chips used in U.S. weapons require Chinese-made components. Analysts have pointed out that in an era of deeply interconnected global supply chains, no nation can fully decouple from another, especially in the case of China-U.S. relations. For the U.S., China's inexpensive, high-performance chips have become the preferred choice for defense production and industrial manufacturing. An undeniable fact that underscores America's deep reliance on China. To illustrate, the supply chains for America's latest missile systems, such as the Joint Air-to-Ground Missile and Long-Range Anti-Ship Missile, are deeply embedded with Chinese suppliers. Production involves dozens, if not hundreds, of suppliers from China, particularly in areas like data acquisition, hardware manufacturing, software development, and final testing, making these suppliers highly irreplaceable. These missiles are considered essential weapons in a potential future Pacific conflict, but without Chinese inputs, America's missile production would significantly decline or even grind to a halt. This dependency extends beyond missile systems. Chinese components are heavily used in American mainstay defense equipment like aircraft carriers and F/A-18 Hornet fighter jets. For example, over 6,000 Chinese-made chips are used in Ford-class aircraft carriers and Wasp-class amphibious assault ships. The F/A-18 Hornet, a key combat aircraft of the U.S. military, also relies on Chinese suppliers for numerous electronic systems and sensors. Data shows that over 40% of the chips used in U.S. Department of Defense weapons and infrastructure come from China. An embarrassing reality for a country that claims global technological leadership. The U.S. decoupling policy is also evident in the realm of rare earth resources. Rare earth elements, vital for electronics and weaponry, are controlled largely by China, which accounts for over 80% of global supply. Other countries collectively produce just 110,000 tons of rare earths annually. Due to the complex and technically demanding nature of rare earth processing, many countries still need to send their extracted materials to China for refinement before they can be used in production. Although the U.S. aims for self-sufficiency in rare earths, its technology and production capabilities fall far short, making it impossible to end its reliance on China. This is one of the major challenges America faces in securing its rare earth supply chain. Rare earths are just one aspect of U.S. dependency on China. The high-tech sector is another. Despite repeatedly restricting the growth of Chinese semiconductor companies, the U.S. high-tech manufacturing sector remains unable to shake its dependence on Chinese equipment and materials. For instance, American chip manufacturers, though heavily supported by the government, still rely on imports from China for key production equipment and critical materials like silicon wafers and high-purity chemicals. Despite the ambitions of the Biden administration's CHIPS Act and various subsidy policies, these measures have yet to significantly improve America's chip self-sufficiency. Instead, High costs and prolonged construction timelines have left U.S. companies struggling. Take Lockheed Martin, the world's largest defense contractor, which is facing severe production challenges. During the early stages of the Ukraine war, Ukraine needed to launch 500 anti-tank missiles daily, and the U.S. provided 7,000 missiles from its stockpile. While this initially proved effective, stocks are now nearly depleted, and Lockheed Martin can only produce 2,100 missiles annually, far short of demand. If a conflict were to erupt in the Pacific, the U.S. could run out of missiles within a week. This is why the U.S. hopes to use long-term support for Ukraine as an opportunity to rebuild its defense production capacity. In the civilian domain, the U.S.'s decoupling policy faces serious obstacles as well. Some Western media outlets have hyped up the idea of Mexico replacing China as America's largest trading partner, suggesting that the U.S. is making progress in decoupling from China. However, this narrative overlooks the complexity of global supply chains. Much of this shift involves re-export trade through Mexico to evade tariffs, rather than a genuine reduction in dependence on China. In reality, China's importance in the global supply chain has not diminished. Instead, it has solidified its position through diversified market strategies and supply chain management. China's role in the global industrial chain has evolved from being the world's factory to becoming the core hub of the global supply chain. From high-end manufacturing to key components, China has irreplaceable advantages throughout the supply chain. The failure of America's decoupling policy fully demonstrates this reality. In certain areas, such as defense and high-tech industries, America's dependence on China has become entrenched, with no short-term solution in sight. Even America's allies, such as the UK and Germany, have shown hesitation and division over decoupling, recognizing China's irreplaceable role in the global economy and supply chain. Moreover, official data shows that in 2023, China's exports of integrated circuits reached 267.8 billion units, with 88.7 billion units exported in just the first 4 months of this year. These numbers indicate that China's chip production capacity not only meets domestic needs but also holds a significant share of the global market. Despite Western technological embargoes, China's semiconductor industry continues to grow in production capability and market share. Even ASML, the renowned European semiconductor equipment manufacturer, has had difficulty meeting European demand and has increased its investments in China, highlighting the importance of the Chinese market in the global semiconductor landscape. Beyond rare earths and semiconductors, Chinese products are indispensable in many aspects of defense production and industrial manufacturing. For instance, essential materials like nitrocellulose used in ammunition production are difficult to find substitutes for. These facts underscore China's central position in the global supply chain, making the U.S. and its allies' decoupling attempts futile political theatrics. For this reason, America's so-called decoupling policy is both a manifestation of its fear of China's industrial development and a reluctant choice amid the tides of globalization. Yet, reality has repeatedly shown that the deep integration of global supply chains cannot be severed by simplistic political means. China's position at the heart of the global supply chain is becoming increasingly unshakable. In summary, America's military industry is deeply reliant on China. From crucial electronic components to key rare earth resources, the U.S. cannot break away from Chinese supply chains in either military or civilian fields. China is not only the world's factory, but also the central hub of the global supply chain, particularly in high-tech and defense manufacturing. America's decoupling policy will continue to clash with the forces of globalization and market economics, ultimately revealing the fragility of its economic system and its inevitable dependence on China. Instead of attempting to decouple, the U.S. would be better served by acknowledging reality and forging a more stable and mutually beneficial relationship with China. The only sensible path forward for global economic development. This pattern of dependence is both a result of globalization and an inevitable outcome of the complementary advantages shared by China and the U.S. in the market economy. The notion of decoupling appears weak and impractical, both logically and realistically. The interconnectedness of global supply chains and the mutual reliance on resources have intricately woven U.S. China relations into the fabric of the world economy. Decoupling poses a significant risk to America's own economy and security, as well as the stability of the global economy. Respecting market principles and enhancing global cooperation is the only viable path for future development.